Hello, my name is Victor and you are with Revit Experiments, where today I'm going to show you some of the other tools in our custom tab that is developed in PyRevit by me. So today I'm going to talk about this tab here, which is called Tools, where stands for Model Manager. So we have these three tools here: parameter by group, replace text in parameter, and view suffix, which are sort of easy to explain. So view suffix, for example, is a really simple tool. When I select views in the browser, it gets them in the list here. I can of course filter, or I can just select all of them, and I can either simply add a suffix or remove one and then add the new one. Very simple to use, and we get this nice message inside the window that 3 elements were updated and 0 failed. So these 3 are updated. Now, in Revit we cannot have multiple views with the same name. So if we try to rename these two to make them have the same names as these ones here, so if we remove their suffix, and in this case 1, and apply that one, 2 of those wouldn't be able to be created. Actually, looking at my selection now, 2 would be able to be created and 1 wouldn't be able because such a view already exists, a view with such a name. So that's very simple. Replace text in parameter is also very simple too. If I click on the button, here I can choose a category for elements which I want to use to batch and replace a part of a parameter. So this is the name of the parameter we're talking about. And by default, it's looking at type parameters. But if we check that checkbox here, it is going to look for instance parameters. So this is very useful for batch operations. So we want to change a certain part of this parameter with a different string. So it only works for text parameters because we are substituting strings. And it's a very nifty little tool. Then parameter by group. This is going to prompt us to select model groups first. And we can select our apartment groups. And then we have the source category and source parameter. And then we have the target category and target parameter. So the thing is, we can grab information from the parameters of one element inside the group and apply it to all the elements of a different category inside that group. And instead of parameter, we can also use the group name or the group ID. This is also sort of used when we assign apartment parameters to different elements that belong to different apartments. However, since our apartments are represented by areas in Revit, more often than not, we use a different tool, which is hidden here in the utilities. And in this utilities dropdown, I have hidden a lot of tools that are not used so often. And that's the case since that tool is a tool in constant progress. So here we have these tools, and then if some of them are found to be used more often, they're moving to the ribbon. And this is the nice thing of having your own custom tab for your company, because these tools are pretty much live where you want them. and how to use them. So what we use more often is the parameter by area. So this parameter by area tool is going to look for the areas. And we can grab a bunch of areas. And we can select which area parameter, for example, the area number, we want to apply for elements of a certain category and their parameter. So we can batch get the area number and apply it to the room number, for example, or to other parameters. And also we have this little option here where we can also include elements that are outside the area boundary at a certain distance. So even if these elements are not intersecting, they're not entirely inside the area, we can still add them to that area. And we did this to be able to include windows on the outer walls that belong to a certain apartment. And then we can simply hit assign parameters, and we can see that 85 elements were updated and 0 failed. Right above this utilities dropdown, we have another dropdown which is called delete. And here we have two options, two different buttons. Delete import patterns. So, these are line patterns that come from AutoCAD files, from DWG AutoCAD files. When we import them, they all have this import string in their name. So this is batch deleting all these unnecessary AutoCAD lines from the project. And then the other one is called delete project parameter. So if I click on it, I can see all the project parameters that I have in my project. And the reason we have this window is that if we want to be doing this in Revit only, we have to delete those parameters one by one. Whereas here, I can see them by groups, and I can select multiple. And I can simply batch delete those parameters. One of my favorite tools, however, is the filter by parameter. You can see that right now it's grayed out because it requires an element or multiple elements to be selected first in order to use it. So what does it do? Why is it my favorite tool, or one of my favorite tools? I didn't know when I made it that it's going to be so useful actually, but I find myself using this all the time. So let's say I select all the instances of this wall in the entire project. And I can see down here in the window, I have 134 different walls. So I can filter this selection by instance parameters. So if I click now on filter by parameter, I can see all the available parameters to me here. So we have areas, we have custom parameters, comments, family, etc., etc. And let's select the length. Once I select a parameter, in this case the length, here I can see all the available values in my selection. So these are all lengths of the walls in this selection. And I can select the ones that I want to leave inside the selection and say filter. And you can see that I have this wall here selected, but I also have 59 others. And those 59 walls all have that same length. And I can continue with this selection, I can continue using this filter. I can hit on it again and I can say, okay, let's go to the, which one should we choose now? Let's say base constraint. And then we can see our levels. So it turns out that we have this wall on many levels because we have a few buildings in this project. So let's say I want to select the walls with this length on plan 10, who's number 2. And now it turns out we have 2 of these selected. And that is how this filter works. However, this filter doesn't need to have elements of the same category selected. You can just grab select a bunch of things and go to the filter, and it will still work. So let's say base constraint, and of course now because we have elements of different categories, we would have the base constraint parameter, but we'd also have the base level and the base offset. So let's say base level, and it turns out they don't have one, and the reason for this is probably that I have grabbed a bunch of groups. But if we select the base constraint, we can see these 2 are available in our selection. And I can filter it out, and it turns out it's a shaft opening. Okay, there is something else that we can do with this filter. Like if I grab all these walls again, I can shift click on that same button. And when I shift clicked, you can see that the difference here is that instead of having a second drop down, let's say comments, instead of having a second drop down with the available values of the parameters in my selection, I can filter by a custom value. So I can actually search here for a string in this parameter, and I can only leave elements that contain this string. So in order to demonstrate this, I'm going to add a comment to this wall, and in order to do so, I'm going to go and edit that group and say comment test number 1. Okay, let's finish that group. And let's grab all these wall inside that view, so 4 walls. And if I go and shift click on this button, I first need to select the right parameter. And here I can choose contains or does not contain. So if I type in test, and this is case insensitive by the way, and say filter, it's going to leave me only with the one that has the test number parameter. And let's grab them O. If I now go and do the same, but this time I select does not contain, and I type in test here, this is going to leave me with the opposite selection. So all the elements that do not contain that string in the parameter. So that's all for today. Thank you for watching this video, and stay here for the next time where I'm going to continue showing these tools that we've made. Thank you and have a good day. Bye.